Hello and welcome back to the Decaf Bubble podcast with me, Abby. It's been a little while. I missed last week's episode, and the truth is I recorded an episode last weekend, and it got deleted. It was kind of like a weird universe situation because that day I had one of those days where you just feel like you have too many things to do. And my friends were coming over at like 6:00 and I started recording really late in the day and I was really stressed out. My nervous system was like in that kind of like rushed fight or flight state, which I'm going to talk about that today a lot because that's kind of the theme of today's episode. But it really wasn't conducive for creativity. And so I chose in that moment to just push through, and I think my nervous system was actually in such a heightened state that I kind of pushed through into this like almost manic state. Let me know if you can relate to this. And I was just kind of like, yeah, that was a great episode, amazing. And then the universe just said no, and the file just did not work. Like the file froze. Even today, I even tried it again, just like out of interest, but I've pretty much accepted now that sometimes the universe just says no, and actually it was a really good lesson. And when my friend came over, Bridget, shout out Bridget if you hear this, she had a similar thing with her like recording, where she had been like, because she's a musician, and she'd been recording something and it had like just deleted. Like tech just does that sometimes. Obviously there's so many things in place now, like autosave, that are designed to make that not happen ever, but sometimes the universe just says no, bitch, like that's getting deleted. Like you're just gonna have to humble yourself and accept that you're not in control in this moment. And so I lost that episode, and if I'm honest now, I'm like, oh yeah, maybe that episode just was not really aligned with what I want to be talking about at the moment, because really what I have been moving even more deeply into is the part of my philosophy which is to do with the nervous system and going at a pace that doesn't override. Even now I'm like, yeah, what am I in a rush for? We're not in any rush here. The whole point in the decaf bubble and the decaf life is not being in a rush. And I feel like, so that's what I want to talk about today. And I want to talk more about my philosophy on this podcast. I taught a class last week in the bubble, in my membership, the bubble, called Decaf Bubble Philosophy 101. And it was really interesting because it reminded me of all the values that came together in me to create this business, to create the Decaf Bubble, to create this platform. And it reconnected me with those values where I had been going a little bit off track into the kind of more like business mentality. And the Decaf Bubble philosophy is all about allowing things to unfold in a very organic, natural, unhurried way. So I'm going to talk a little bit about one aspect of that philosophy today, which is embodiment. And I also want to catch you up on what I shared 2 weeks ago, about how I booked for a comedy class. I actually went to that comedy class last week, and I also shared about it on my stories and Instagram, so you might have seen. So I went to my first ever stand-up comedy class, and it was so good. So first of all, it was run by Bitches and Stitches, which is such a funny name, and it's like a female centered comedy collective. So highly recommend them. Like, it was a great class, really informative, and it was held at Damsel, which is also a female-run, female-centered venue in Hoxton, which is just so cool. It's in East London. I highly recommend, like, if you're London based, to go and check out Damsel for all kinds of events and just like a gorgeous space. cafe, food, drinks, like everything. They have everything there, and it's like such a safe space for women and femmes and non-binary people. So yeah, and also keep your eyes peeled because I might have something coming up collaborating with Damsel soon. Okay, so anyway, I went to this comedy class and it was just exactly what I needed. Like, I had been in such a rut. It almost like brushed off all the winter cobwebs. Like, I put on a cute outfit and I just felt like so human again afterwards, having kind of met new people and had some like awkward small talk that turned into like nice little moments. And you know, when you just go to something new and you meet strangers and you're just like, wow, the world is bigger. And also I learned so much about joke structure. Like, that was the main thing that I got from the class. We just like learned some cool prompts and like structures and things for writing jokes. So it was great, and I highly recommend, if you've been in any kind of creative rut, go to a class that you're like a complete beginner in, not something that you feel pressure to be good in because it's like your thing that you're meant to be good at, but choose something that's like, yeah, like completely new to you. So continuing my journey, I feel like the next step has already been taken, which is I have booked a week-long comedy intensive course, and I will share about that like maybe while I'm doing it or afterwards. I'll definitely share something, but that's kind of the next stage on my journey. It's really epic to reflect on my journey up till now and going to this class and how different it feels to be engaging with a performance craft from like a really, really different place. I shared about this in the last episode, but I want to talk a little bit more about my journey with this. And if you haven't listened to that episode, I have a long history of performance. Like, I've performed my whole life, basically. As a kid, I used to go to stage schools, and I did music, I did ballet, I did singing, lots of like musical theatre, and then I went to drama school for a while, like on the weekends while I was in sixth form, and then I went to a drama school for uni. I did a performance degree, and so I was pursuing a career in theatre for like many years, like decades even, because from a really young age I always thought that's the path that I wanted to take. But then as a very highly sensitive person, that path was kind of always it just got harder and harder, because the way that like the culture is around the arts it felt so harsh to my nervous system, because I didn't really have good boundaries yet because I was young. And you know, the way that the drama school like culture can be very like controlling and very dismissive of sensitivity, and it's very much about like you just have to push yourself and push yourself and push yourself beyond like what you're even okay with. And so the idea of like personal boundaries and being embodied in your own truth and following your own internal guidance is like not a thing, like not taught to you, not really. It's kind of like almost if you can't handle the kitchen, if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. Like, that's kind of the energy of that world. And in my opinion, that's the energy of like all of the arts industries, really. It's like this dog eat dog kind of thing of like, if you can't handle it, if you're too sensitive, like you need to toughen up, you need to get over it. And then also this constant sense of like time is running out, especially if you're a woman, because of course, if you're a woman, your value is very much, you know, how you look and everything. So you need to make sure you achieve success before you age. And all of this stuff that's just so bad for our nervous system, and so like the opposite of what we need in order to feel creative and like we want to express ourselves. So all of that happened, you know, that all of that conditioning is in my system. And then, to cut a very long story short, lockdown was a blessing in the sense that like it gave me a chance to reflect and really get in touch with the sensitive side of myself that I thought I had to just completely repress and override. And it made me realize that when I take the pressure off myself, that's when I'm the most creative. And so that's kind of where the whole decaf bubble philosophy started coming from, was realizing that it was honestly the opposite of what I'd been taught. When I didn't pressure myself, when I didn't put a time pressure on, when I didn't try and override myself and ignore my body and ignore my boundaries and my sensitivity, that's when the most true creative expression would come out of me. And so yeah, that's what the decaf bubble philosophy is all about. And coming back to like having had that break essentially from those industries, I've spent time building this business, building Cocoon, my first course, and the Bubble, which is my membership, and creating this healing safe space for artists who are just like me, who are highly sensitive and who feel like their art is something very sacred that can't be forced and can't be rushed and must be engaged with in an organic way, you know, in a way that is shielded from the outside pressures. And as I've embodied this philosophy myself, I have been able to develop this resilience, which is different from overriding. It's different from forcing. The resilience is nervous system capacity. It's the ability to go into a situation that is engaging with commerce and business and value exchange and professionalism. And so I want to make it clear that my philosophy is not about like turning away from capitalism and business completely. I don't think that's necessary at all. I think highly sensitive people can have business and can be professional artists and can share their work and can build that capacity and that resilience. I just don't want us to do it in a way that's overriding our system and going too fast and too much too soon and all of that kind of thing. That can be deeply traumatizing. And I'm not using that word trauma without serious consideration. I genuinely believe that forcing ourselves and pushing ourselves to do things and express ourselves and expose ourselves and be seen and put our heart on a plate in a way that doesn't feel safe is traumatizing. And that might be on a subtle level that, you know, builds up, or it might truly put us off forever. And then we just think, okay, I can't handle that. I can't handle that life. Maybe I'm just not an artist. And then we turn our back completely on our creativity. And that is really sad. I think I know that there are artists out there right now who have turned their back completely on their creativity because it's so overwhelming. And most of the advice out there is like, just push through that overwhelm. And like, that is not what my space is about. That doesn't align with my values at all. I think there's a different way. And I am the experiment that, you know, that I'm testing this whole philosophy out on. And I want to share this, you know, this win of going to comedy class and feeling that I'm in a completely different space than I was when I was doing it last time, when I was entering into this world last time. Because when I was at drama school, I've always loved comedy. I've always loved comic performance. And I would have these experiences sometimes where I felt really safe and really like resourced and free. And I would just like enjoy that process of creating comedy so much. And not just comedy, creating anything, honestly, just that feeling of like when you feel safe and able to like play and access that state of play, it just feels so good and you're just like vibing and bouncing off the people you're with. And then at other times I would go into situations where for some reason I didn't feel safe. Maybe it was because I didn't know the people very well, or maybe it was because there was like a bit of a like bro culture, or a bit of, I don't know, like whatever it is, I was highly sensitive to it. I'm not saying that like they were at fault or it's their fault, but I wasn't aware of the nervous system in those times. So I would essentially go into this freeze state where I'd be like, oh my God, like I must just not be funny. Like I must just have no value or talent because I can't access it right now. And I would feel so ashamed and embarrassed and frozen and like, oh God, it's just the worst thing. And then like I would never go to that class again, or I would never show up again, because I didn't have my own back in the ability to say like, oh, it's okay. Like I just didn't feel safe. If I felt safe, I would have opened up and had fun, but there's no pressure. Like I don't have to do it. You know, that's how I feel now. But back then I did feel pressure. I felt like my self-worth was riding on things going well and people thinking I was good and talented. And, you know, so now going back into this world and re-entering into this world, I have these like tools and these boundaries and this like core foundation of like self-acceptance where I'm like, you know what, if I go on this week-long course and I don't come up with anything funny in the whole week, and I don't do the showcase because I don't feel ready and I don't feel safe, that is completely fine, because I would have taken that step of going to that course, and that was really brave. And I would praise myself for what I did do, as opposed to beating myself up for what I'm not yet ready for. And that's a huge part of nervous system care and like awareness, is that if we're not ready for something yet, it doesn't mean we never will be, and it doesn't mean we have to pressure ourselves through it and pressure ourselves into something that we don't yet feel ready for or safe for. I actually had an experience last week, separate from the comedy class, that was really helpful for reminding me of how far I've come, because it was an experience in the context of business. And it was essentially a situation with somebody pressurizing me and making a narrative that I am overreacting or I'm being too sensitive around like what I'm ready for and what, you know, feels good. And it was kind of this energy of, well, you're obviously not ready for the thing that you say you want. That was how it felt to me, right? And it was so interesting because that is exactly the energy that I am so familiar with from drama school and from the arts and from capitalism and everything. It's like, well, you know, if this like feels too much for you, then like you probably should just like go away and like heal or whatever, or just or like come back when you're ready, you know. Come back when you're ready to like toughen up kind of energy. And at first I was really upset. I was really, really deeply triggered by this. And then I realized, wow, this actually is just not what I believe. This is actually, yeah, it might be a really dominant belief system, might be a really dominant culture, but it's not what I believe, and it's also not what I know to be true. I don't think, like, I've worked a lot with young people and with like really young people, like kids who are like coming to performing for the first time. And if a kid is feeling stage fright, my approach is never to be like, well, you obviously don't want to do drama then, do you? Because you've got stage fright. It's like, and I'm not saying it's that black and white, but, you know, just to make a point, like, as a skilled facilitator, I would try and keep that kid feeling like they're safe in the space that we're in, and that there's no pressure and that there's no rush, and they can keep observing, and they're not going to lose any attention or even care from me. They're not going to lose any respect from me I would just be able to simply attune to the fact that they're not quite feeling safe enough. And I would encourage them to try. I would keep inviting them to try, but I wouldn't like guilt them or blame them or kind of give them this ultimatum of like, well, you know, this is just what it takes, right? But that's the way I was treated so much when I was younger. And that kind of stuff takes a long time to decondition. But it was so great last week to have this experience and be like, wow, I have deconditioned this. I don't care. Like, if this person thinks I'm being a little baby and being too sensitive, I don't fucking care, because I am highly sensitive. That is a fact about me. That's not something I'm trying to change anymore. It certainly was something I was trying to change, but it's now something I consider to be a superpower. And it's also something that I consider to be a defining feature of pretty much all of the artists that I work with. Like, everybody who has taken a course or come into my membership or worked one-on-one with me has been similar to me in that sense, where creativity feels so intimate and raw and real and like sacred. It's a sacred act. It's a very pure thing that can't be diluted by that forced expectation or that pressure. And I don't really see that many people talking about this nervous system aspect, where it's like, hey, how about, like, there's definitely like the whole embodiment nervous system world, but I don't see it crossing over with the arts that much. There is an account on Instagram called Muscle Music, which I highly recommend you check out if you're interested in this and you want to learn about the nervous system in relation to like performance and music and the arts. I haven't taken any of her courses, but I have learned a lot from her Instagram, so I recommend checking that out, Muscle Music. But yeah, I guess my message for today is, you're not too sensitive and you're not taking too long. You're not too sensitive. And this is something that I needed to hear last week. This is something I needed to hear when I was younger. It's such a deep, pervasive conditioning that it's almost like it takes many layers and spirals to unwind this conditioning. But I want you to know, as an artist, like, you're not taking too long. If there's resistance in you, if you're not ready for something, like, take a little step that you are ready for and just keep backing yourself at every single stage. Don't let anyone tell you that you're being too sensitive or you're too slow or you're doing it wrong. Just do it your way and do it the way that you can, and find community where that value is shared, you know, because creativity is organic. Creativity is natural. Creativity is what happens when we are our best selves, when we feel our best, most nourished, most relaxed, happiest, calmest nervous system self, you know. And I know that from embodied experience, and I know that from, you know, the artists that I have worked with, and I just believe that there is a different way. Yes, you can choose that road of pushing through. That road will get you what you want on paper as well. Like, you might even get to the point of success and attention and money and likes and followers and fans. But at what cost? The cost shouldn't be you. The cost shouldn't be your health, your nervous system, your mental health, you know? Creativity is good for us. Creativity energizes us like it's meant to be good for us. And so if it's not feeling that way, this isn't me saying you're doing it wrong. This is me saying it gets to feel better. It gets to feel good. It gets to feel aligned and like delicious and just unfolding and like a dance with a lover, you know? So yeah. That is my message for today. You're not too sensitive and you're not taking too long. And actually, the fact that you're sensitive is what makes you a brilliant artist. And the fact that you feel like you want to take your time just shows that you're a real one and you're not doing this for the wrong reasons. You're doing it because art matters on a deeper level than capitalism. Not that we shouldn't make good money from our art, but like you care about it deeper than that. You're an artist to your soul. Like you're here to bring change and healing and upliftment and joy. Like all of that is so special and precious, and I love that for us. Like I love the fact that we're taking longer and we're just letting our fruit ripen on the vine in the sun organically. And you know what organic fruit is? More delicious, more healthy, more nutritious, sweeter, and also better for the ecosystem around it. And I think that's so true of artists as well. Like the more we decondition from these harmful narratives and cultural like norms that it's okay to override and it's okay to sacrifice the humanity and the human like side of us for the sake of the machine of industry, the more we decondition from that, the more just our presence in the arts will give permission to other people, other artists, to also decondition from these things that aren't serving any of us or our planet. Okay, if you feel me and if you would love to be part of a community where this is the value, this is the shared value that we hold, this is the culture that we hold, I would love to invite you to join the Bubble community. The Bubble is my membership that I have been running for a year now. It's designed to provide holistic and practical support to artists. So the holistic side is kind of talking about the inner experience, the embodiment, the nervous system capacity. We do inner work and journaling and meditation. And then the practical side is having the opportunity to regularly share what you're working on. I spoke about work in progress circles in the last episode in quite a lot of detail, but essentially work in progress circles, we do them twice a month, and it's a really supportive space to share a little extract of something you're working on that's not finished, that you can just, first of all, just practice being seen. That goes a long way in developing resilience if we just build that into our habit of like doing that regularly. And then you can also get feedback from that as well, which can be really helpful for people's process. I wanted to share a couple quotes today just from members because I feel like I can obviously sing the praises of the Bubble membership, but I want you to hear from some of the members because I think their feedback and their experience is the true test of, you know, what this community can bring, the value that this community can provide. So, for example, Isabel, shout out Isabel if you're listening, she said, I think sometimes with creativity, it can be a very lonely process and we end up thinking this is just how it's supposed to be, but it isn't. I think women are supposed to come together in this way, coming out of that feeling that it has to be a competition. This is a really warm and nurturing space in which all of our differences can fit into a spectrum, and I get very fueled up by being in this space. And then Abby, not me, a different Abby, said, as someone who has fluctuating mental health obstacles which affect how I show up in music, going to these sessions has helped me finish more and more songs to consider for my debut album. These sessions give me the courage to show up and make it happen even on the days when it's a struggle. And then Melanie said, getting feedback has been so helpful. I've been writing by myself for so long and now I'm getting something back to say that I'm on the right track. It's solving accountability to have work in progress circles be part of my schedule and wanting to have something new for you guys to listen to. It's also an investment in this goal and desire that feels so big, sending a message to the universe that I'm serious about this. So thank you to Melanie, to Abby and Isabel for sharing these ways in which the Bubble has helped you. I appreciate you guys so much. So if you want to get more information, if you want to get a breakdown of what the membership entails every month in terms of the events and the resources, go to decafbubble.com/bubble. I will put that in the show notes. And the two things to know right now is that there is about 2 weeks left to join because I'm closing the doors on the 31st of March. And because the bubble has just turned 1 year old, you can get a special offer, a discount on your first month, which is 50% off your first month with the code BIRTHDAY. Okay, that is all for today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and I will speak to you next week. Bye.